Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Sorry I'm late, everyone. Hello, hello. Cool, 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 cool. Welcome, welcome. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Yep, yep. In the chat. Testing, testing. Yeah, yeah. Thumbs, thumbs. Great, great. All right. Um, sweet. Okay. So let me share my screen. Blah, 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 blah. Which one? Which one? Second screen. Okie doke. Hopefully you can see my Ableton. Sorry I'm late. My computer died last class, so had to wait for everything to kick back in. Okie doke. Hopefully that works. Cool. You are in the air. Yes, I'm on the line. Okay, so today, first of all, I had to address the fact that I kind of it was a mistake, but it actually worked out well. Last week we did like reverse engineering sounds with Wavetable, that example with Rufus. And last week, if you look at Moodul, it's meant to be about effects, but I think that works out better because effects is the sort of thing that we should spend like a proper chunk of time on. Ooh, I see Luke. Let me get your microphone. I don't like it when I work on multiple screens. I don't know where anything is. Let me double click this. Ah, lovely. Look. Where's your face? Mm-hmm. All right. Luke's leaving. I see how it is, Luke. I'll share my screen again. Oh no, I'm still doing it. Cool. All right. I'm sure he's just having internet issues. Same old story with TAFE internet, on campus internet. So let's talk about effects because, yeah, it is. I'd say it's an integral part of sound design. Lukey, enable his mic. Yeah, it's an integral part of sound design. And
Hey,
hey. TAFE internet. Hey,
hello.
hey.
Hey, sorry, something weird going on. I can't enter anything into the chat, which is strange.
Oh,
Can anyone else access the chat?
yeah. There's some people talking. Yan is
I can't see the chat
typing right now. Yeah, he's fine.
since strange.
Not sure. Did I make you presenter? I don't know. But yeah, chat's working, Lee.
I don't know. Strange. I don't know what's going on. I might restart Teams and I'll jump back on and see if
Yeah,
I can get it fixed.
that usually works.
Back
Okay.
in 2 minutes.
Yep.
Alrighty. See you guys soon.
See you soon. All right. So effects. Now, crucial for sound design, crucial in general to understand effects. Okay. Now, some of you probably all over it, probably just chucking reverbs, delays, phases, flanges, flangers, choruses everywhere, and just having lots of fun with that, which is great. And some of you might just be like, I don't know what that thing does, or there's some effects that I can see, I don't touch them because I don't know. Now, my first advice for anyone here who feels like they're in that situation, I would say this: do not be afraid. Effects is one of those things. Is the best way to learn is to approach it with the attitude of, hey, I'm gonna put this on there. I'm gonna twist some things and see what it does. All right. I liken it to learning how to play Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat for the first time. Obviously, if you never played those fighting games before, Tekken especially, if you never played those fighting games before, you'll be like, button mash. And then occasionally you might realize down forward punch does something, does like a move, a special move. So I liken to understanding effects or being comfortable with effects the same way as you being comfortable with the special moves. You know where the parameters are to get a certain sound. And that comes from experience, right? Of course, I'm going to give you tips. That's why you're here. I'm teaching. So first of all, attitude. You got to try it out yourself. That's the best way, because guess what? At the end of the day, there is no right or wrong when it comes to sound design. Especially the case with effects. There's no rule book that you have to set a reverb pre-delay to 50 milliseconds and blah, 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 blah. Right? I know it looks technical, but they're just parameters that emulate certain things in terms of the effects processing. Now, first of all, there was a time there was no effects. We're talking about the history of it all. And then thanks to Les Paul, yes, the guitar guy, he started experimenting with multi-track recording, multiple tape heads, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, from the 50s onwards, you had the first reverb, the first distortion, the first phaser, that kind of thing. I think I just dropped out for a second there. My internet's probably shocking. So apologies for any glitchiness. Yeah. Oh, Luke's typing. Oh my God. Where are you? Can I right click you? The fact that you're typing, Luke, means you solved the issue. Let's pop on his request to join. Sure. Let's get his chat going. I don't know what's going on. It stopped working. Cables are frozen. Cables are frozen? Are we good? You can still hear me? I assume so. Yeah, good. Wait, oh. Hey. Luke is here. Luke is in it. All right, beautiful. All right, I'll charge forward. So yes, attitude. Second of all, there was a time there was no effects. So there were smart engineers who worked out ways to emulate stuff, right? So reverb, day one was people playing back audio through speakers in rooms and sewer pipes of different lengths to get like this reverb effect, which is a space kind of effect, right? To emulate sound in space. Phases, flanges, choruses are all results of playing around with tape and playing around with the timing and modulations of the tape head. And then it creates this movement and creates a kind of interesting spacey psychedelic effect, which we still use to this day. Fantastic, yeah? So first of all, let's talk about the families. Now, every teacher has a different approach to this. I'll show you mine, and if Luke wants to chime in, that's cool as well. But this is how I like to understand it. This is what helped me understand effects over the course of my production career. Now, first of all, Ableton actually tries to help you kind of differentiate the effects. Now, if we may have mentioned this in the previous class, but if you look at your effects page, audio effects in Ableton, just native Ableton devices, you'll notice that there are categories. If you don't see it, it's possibly because it's on this ungrouped mode. So to get back to that, if you see this instead, right click, group in folder, all right? So there are these groups. Now, I like to simplify even further, okay? So this could help you, this may not, but I hope this helps you. I believe there are 4 families of effects. One being tone, one being dynamics, one being time-based, and the last one being modulation. 4 families. Now, in tone, I include things like EQ and filter, as well as things in drive and color. Because at the end of the day, it is my belief that they affect the tonality of a sound. Now, let's see if we can see what I'm on about. So I'm just going to get simpler, get some basic sounds. So I might get, let's use something nice and bright. Snare. Ooh, perfect. Cool. So I have a sound and I want to adjust the tone of it. So there's various ways. If I'm thinking tone, I can affect the EQs and filters. Yeah. So if we talk about EQ8 here. Okay, what can I do with the tone of it? Right? So without this EQ effect, sounds like that. With it, it is now thin. Thinner sounding. Now, by the way, these terms I'm throwing out, thin, full, bright, all this, it's production colloquialism. Like not everyone will have the same descriptions for everything. But essentially, if you kind of understand the descriptors, you might get an idea of what the sound is actually doing, right? Okay, so if I want thin and bright, take the bass out, extra top end. By the way, some people who do this stuff, especially when they have a tendency to make very clean music and they're mixing engineers or something, they'll see that and they'll cringe because like boosting by that much is a bit ridiculous in terms of professional mixing. However, I want you to get into the mindset that when you're using effects during the writing process, it is purely fair game. It really is down to your kind of preferences, your tastes, and as long as you don't hurt yourself going nuts with the sounds. Like if you did this, chances are it's going to be a bit sharp. So I'm not going to do that to you. Within reason, right? This is what I mean. Just push, push, push. And then when you go, okay, maybe I went too far there, like that. Controlled. And remember, I'm approaching this from a very creative mindset. This, in terms of mixing standards, is horrible, right? But there's definitely an argument for being creative and trying to push a sound somewhere. But that tonality of the original sample, which is this, is different now because of this EQ, right? So EQs, I would say, is a straight kind of like shortcut to changing the tone of a sound, okay? Now, I also mentioned drive and color within Ableton. So all these amp, cabinet, drum bus effects, I consider them tonal as well, part of the tonal family, tone family. Technically, they're distortions. If you were to get into the definitions of it all, but at the end of the day, it's affecting, in my mind anyway, it's affecting the tone. So to give you an idea, if I use any one of these, let's use overdrive for example. If I add drive, it's in the name. There's things called overdrive. There's a drive control. It probably means something like increasing the effect, doesn't it? And some of the effects that you will encounter, whether it's within Ableton or not, you have the ability to sculpt the tone even further. And yes, even though this is technically a group of effects called distortions, to me it's in the family of changing the tone, because check this out. that is a different tone to this, right? And with anything, especially with sound design, time and place, if it fits in a musical situation, then it works, right? So if I go to, well, let's just chuck a loop on, just to give us some musical context. Just something with a bit of everything. That will do. Chuck that on there. Let's loop. So that's already got effects and anything. That's the other thing you gotta remember with your loops and stuff that you find online or within Ableton itself as well, the sample library. A lot of them have a lot of effects baked into it. So be mindful of that when you start trying to like put the same effect, a type on another thing. Like you gotta question why you do it. So I got this sound. So I might record that in. Ooh, what do I start with that? Actually, I'll just draw it in. Been finger drumming all day. Cool. Cool. Bum. Now, without this overdrive, now there's a high chance that 50% of you be like, I prefer that cleaner sound. There's also a high chance that another section of you be like, oh, there's something about that sound. Tone, dynamics modulation, and time, yeah. And remember, that's not rules. These are not rules. I think that the material says something else. I'm trying to give you my spin on it, yeah? More important to think about what I'm saying, like I'm talking about tone, the tools so far, equalization and distortion all live under tone, yeah? To me, anyway, because I'm affecting the tone. Did I just log off for a second there? Let me just change my internet. Got two routers here. I might drop out for a second. Give me a second. Ooh. Okay. Should be back. Hopefully that's okay. Okie doke. Cool. So tonal, overdrive. So like I said, some people will like this tone. Some people will like this tone. The very fact that it's very much a personal or a preferential kind of situation, like you might just prefer that kind of style, then it's proof that this world we're diving in, it's completely up to you what you prefer, right? As long as you don't hurt anybody, like if you're, I don't know, if you decide to blindly go, and then, maximum everything, like as soon as I hit the note, and without actually knowing what I'm doing, that's potentially quite harsh and at worst painful, right? So this is why I suggest to anyone marrying the thought or the attitude to kind of explore, also, put the sound, play the sound if possible, loop it, doesn't matter, listen to it and go in incremental steps. See, that's that section where I'm like, oh, not so nice, go back, right? Now here's a key feature of pretty much every audio effect in Ableton, pretty much everything. Dry wet. Dry wet being blend. So the blend of the signal itself, the original sound of the whatever instrument you got, the original clean signal versus the amount of the affected signal. So as you turn up dry wet from 0, you're getting pure clean sound, whatever it was, unaffected. So that's one way to bypass an effect, is to crank it down to 0. And then as you turn up, you hear more and more of the effect. And of course, if you go to 100%, you only hear the affected signal. You don't hear the dry signal anymore. And because there's so much range between that, you have to consider automating, controlling, playing with that, because within that itself is a range of expression. You can imagine something happening and automating that over time, which would sound like this. Clean to dirty. Something simple like that. Yeah, I don't know. Just an idea. That's very simplistic, but it's cool. Like tools like this, especially in Ableton, they can look very minimal and very like lean. But the fact is, there's these controls. If you automate and go crazy with it, in fact, let me, while I'm here, might just map a couple of things. I'm using a MIDI controller. I'm pretty sure in core skills you talk about MIDI controllers, but yeah, I just got my MIDI controller back so I can actually twist controls here. So let's see how that sounds like. So you can definitely have fun recording something. Right, so just recording over a loop. I'm really holding myself back here. I normally, as soon as I do this, I'm planning ahead, and in my head, I'm like, all right, reverb, you know. But I'll show you. I'll build up to that. So, yeah, it's affecting the tone. Now, there's a little distinction between the type of distortions that live within the tonal family. It's purely mathematical. Literally. I'll show you what I mean. So under audio effects, I'm going to bypass that. So overdrive, amp, cabinet, drum bus, dynamic tube, pedal, most or saturator, vinyl distortion, those guys. Generally speaking, they create even harmonics that sound pleasant to the ear. They sound gritty, fuzzy, sometimes warm, sometimes harsh, but it's definitely more on the kind of aggressive side, yeah? Whereas effects like erosion and redux, generally speaking, throw a lot of more odd harmonics and aliasing artifacts. You do not need to know that. You just need to know that there's a difference. There's two flavors, essentially. There's obviously a whole range in between, but one sounds more analog, one sounds more digital. So the analog stuff, I mean, it kind of makes sense. An amplifier, like this guitarist plugging an amplifier, you know, those guys who are like, yeah, it's about the tone. Oh, yeah, analog tone, right? That kind of stuff. Versus this kind of sound, which a lot of people associate with Game Boy 8-bit kind of stuff. See how that kind of sounds more harsh to the ear? It's, well, I was going to say more harsh. It's a bit more like that computery digital sound, right? Redux is so called because it's reducing the sound quality intentionally. Now you might go, why the hell do I want to do that? Well, I'll show you why. You go to, let's find a stock sample here. Let's try to find something nice and smooth. Yeah, that'll do. Go chuck that in harmony. Here we go. Whoa, just watch the volume on that, turn it down. I feel like pitching it down as well. So I'm going to do a technique, just an applied technique. I'm using BitCrusher, this computery reduction of sound quality, right? Audio effects, Redux. There's a thing, there was a trend for a bit. It's popularized by Noah Forti Shabib, who's Drake's producer, where they did this kind of underwater kind of effect, which essentially is downsampling the quality of the song, the sound, and then applying a filter, because there's actually a filter in here. So check this how this sounds. Versus the clean sound. So what I'm saying is this. Analog style, digital style does not mean better or worse. Just like with synthesis, digital synthesis is not a bad, nasty thing. It's just a different flavor, and you can still make that flavor go somewhere, right? Just play around the range. If you filter out anything, you create warmth because it's muffled, it's not as present, not as too sparkly, airy. So this warm kind of sounds from this. Maybe add some jitter. So how does it sound in context? What I mean by context, if you're cooking and you're adding spices to stuff and you're, seasoning the chicken and blah, 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 and you're like, oh, I just put cayenne on a chicken in a, what's kind of weird? Cayenne on chicken in an oatmeal dish. You have to understand like what you're doing. You have to make it contextual. So you have to check how it fits in the music, of course. So everything I'm doing, even though it seems random, I have a plan, kind of. I know how the sounds will fit, even though I'm just pulling samples out the ether here. And how did I do that? I just played with this stuff for a while, like no magic, nothing but practice, right? The only tip I can give you, like I said, the mindset and trying to simplify it for yourself and understanding dry wet. Now, an effect like this, and I'll talk about this a bit later, but effects like this, generally speaking, you want fully wet, 100%. But if I play around with the dry wet here, you can dial it in if you wish. I'm liking the fully processed version, yeah? Anyway, cool. It's hard to talk about all the effects in an hour, so I'm gonna have to go warp speed. So that's tonal effects. EQs, filters, distortions. Filters, by the way, if you see this yellow box here, it means that it lives under my effects, the effects I generally use. And it's not a huge list because I want to focus my sound, but auto filters probably my most used effect. Seriously. And with that, you can create a lot of movement with just this thing. Like, even if I was just to automate this. Let's get rid of all that. Automate something fresh. Okay. Okay, let's record that. Oi, ha. Gotta get that body into it. Cool. How's it sound in the music? Bit of an accidental bump there because it looped back around. Don't mind that though. This is where you give yourself the opportunity for accidental music accidents, which is when you usually, I wouldn't say usually, but a lot of times it does happen when you have that brave, fearless attitude towards trying these things. You kind of get rewarded with the happy accident situation, right? But on top of that, I would also highly suggest monitoring, listening back to your music at good volume. Aim for about 85 dB, which is kind of conversational level. Don't go nuts. Just give yourself a bit of space, just in case you do go a bit too excited one day and go maximum feedback on something, and you're wondering why you're creating an immense distorted mess, right? So smart, big brain approach, yeah. Brave, but also careful. Okay, so that works. That's creating movement, and see how simplistic, as I'm controlling 1 or 2 parameters out of each effect. Controlling that over time, this is only 4 bars. You can imagine you can have a whole jam of this for 8 bars, 16, 32. Make sections where you're just going wild with the effects. Tame Impala does it. Jesus, he has whole parts of the music which is just exploration of phaser and flanger, right? And I'll get to that, being mindful of the time here. So tone, distortion, filters. Distortion includes the saturation fuzzy types, as well as the digital bit crushed kind of redux effects, erosion effects, right? I wish I could go through all of them. I wish I could, right? Maybe we can split it into 2 lessons, but we'll see. We'll see how we go. But yeah, they're pretty obvious. And things like saturation, by the way, if you had a pretty eagle eye, you would probably notice that I got a little PC strip on my default template here, almost on every channel. Within that PC strip are some plugins, right? A couple plugins that are extra. Yeah, I bought these, right? But previously I had a saturator on inside the PC strip. Saturation is probably one of my most used effects as well, because it can, let's just show you what I mean. I can take a mix from sounding like, and saturation lives underneath driving color as well. With careful use, I'm just going to emulate the sound of a certain plugin. Luke might have heard of it, the Sonox Inflator, which is essentially just soft sine 2B plus, soft clip on, output down a tad. So without it, with it. Secret sauce, saturation with a right touch of it. What you're doing is you're chucking extra goody, nice harmonics on the sounds. And if you put on the mix bus with a careful touch, maybe even turning down the dry wet, you're reinforcing the sounds with extra richness. In other words, it just makes it sound better. Yeah. So you can imagine if I add extra stuff like some kick drums. It's gonna have some kick drums. Ooh. Okay, let's do that. Wow, lost it. There. Okay. Oops. Where is it? There we go. Nice. Boom, da, boom, boom. Second round, gonna have another rhythm. Cool. All right. So we're building something. We're building something. All right. Cool. Let's go to the next obvious one. So you get it. Tone, tone, tone. Next obvious one. I'm not going to go in a particular order, but I'm just maybe in order of obviousness. The next one's time-based. Time-based purely being the fact that they use time as a value. So let me show you. If you go to, let's go snare. Audio effects. Now, if you look at delay and loop, reverb and resonance, they are Ableton's, largely speaking, effects that utilize time. Now, there's a bit of crossover with all these effects, by the way, but technically speaking, reverb, delay. Reverb came first, delay came after. Delay is an application of reverb. Delay is just multiplications of time to create that repeating effect, right? So same, but different. But if you have the right plugin, you could make delays sound like reverbs if it has diffusion, stuff like that. That's why there's a lot of crossover. But at the end of the day, the bottom line, if I go to reverb, chuck it on the channel. My main obvious control I can use in any reverb is decay time, right? That essentially goes from short to long. And yes, you can definitely imagine automating that or modulating that, but that's advanced next time. Just a couple of loops and a couple one-shot sounds, but it sounds more than that, doesn't it, because of the effects. So reverbs are awesome because they're you can hear them, right? But also reverbs are heavily overused when you're starting out. And I'll get to this point. I hope I get to this point when I get to it. But yeah, basically, no other effect I would say other than reverb is more susceptible to the balance between dry and wet. Because if you go too far, the sound quickly loses its clarity, its source, its actual original tone. So here's what I mean. That's a smaller setting, lesser setting, and you get that nice snap from the snare, but I'm getting the effect of the reverb. Now, when you're starting out, it's tempting to do this. It 100% sounds cool, but I lose the function of the backbeat of a snare. So you get what I'm saying? You gotta think about why you're putting this stuff on there. I'm just making it splashy, interesting, giving dynamics and movement to the snare, which is not doing much besides the tonal thing, right? But check it out now. There's a lot you can do within that, like other reverb plugins, especially the convolution ones. You can mess around with pitch as well, or you don't even need to go too far. Like there's a lot of controls in here, but decay is the first easy one. The second thing I like to play around with is the EQ within itself. There's a input filter, so cuts off sounds going into it, so you can kind of make it sound even cleaner. I'm getting the splash, none of the mud, right? And there's a diffusion network, which I can change the way the reverb tone is. And to create movement in it, the Ableton stock reverb, this section gets forgotten about for some reason. I find a lot of people do that. There's this whole range of movement you can create using the inbuilt chorusing effect inside the reverb. It's very subtle, but it's creating this kind of like animation, almost tangible shifting of the sound. Now, does any of that matter? Like what setting did you? No, you had to play around with it and just go, and then like, oh, I like that. Or, or what you can do is kind of just automate it over time. All of that stuff can be modulated, automated, which creates a lot of interest, Of course, there's a step too far. There's got to be a reason. The reason why I'm doing it, just to show you my justification, the sound is very static otherwise. It's a snare, but I want to have this every second note to go, you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting for the rhythm too, even though it's simple. Cool? Yeah. So reverbs, its application is to put a sound in a space. But I like to think the consequence of reverb is adjusting the length of a sound. Because obviously if you have a long reverb setting, you can create extra release to it. You know what I mean? So fantastic, right? You can go nuts with this. Like I used to use reverb for everything, but now I'm starting to play around with hybrid reverb. I'll keep that just so you can hear it, but I'll put on hybrid reverb, which is a combo mashing of convolution and algorithmic reverb. Not important for you to know now. Convolution just is their models, their impulse response models of spaces or things, right? Now, again, it's not something I want to focus on. But one thing I wanted to point you to, for those who may have heard of Eventide Black Hole, Strymon Big Sky, these guitar effects that cost at least $600-700, kind of highly touted to be the best reverb, man, because it's got shimmer, really cool shimmer. It's like, what the hell shimmer? Well, in Ableton, you have it. This is the shimmer, which essentially is pitch shifting reverb tail. It's a little bit too hectic, so I'm just gonna adjust the decay time, and I'll turn up the shimmer. I can change the pitch here. It's automatically set to 12 semitones. And of course, on a drum sound, that's not going to mean anything, but what you're getting now is like this pitched version. Without it, so I get my little reverb slash from the other plugin, but this is adding that pitched kind of weird digital kind of robot-y sound. And that is why, my friends, it says resonance there too, because if you use reverbs a certain way, you can change the tonality of the sound, which also means it can affect the tone. But generally speaking, you can make this kind of extra, like almost synthesized version of the tone of the sound, which is a very heady thing to think about. But basically, there's these tools in there that not only put sounds in space and adjusting the time of the sound, but in theory, you can also, with the right tool, play around the pitch of the sound too. Now, to be honest, I don't like that too much. Maybe let's see it with a very low amount of sprinkle. it's not doing anything special to me. Even though it is kind of cool in isolation, in the context of the music, it's not adding anything. That procedure, my friends, get into the habit of that, right? Don't just actually throw stuff on, but don't be afraid to cut it, right? Because not everything adds specialness to this sound in the context of a song. Word salad, word porridge. Now I'm so sorry. Blackie sleep again. Yes. No. Anyway, you have to go as far as you can with sound design and do the cool stuff, but also check in the context of music, and then turn on and off the effect to see if it's actually adding something. If it's not doing anything, it's just eating up valuable headroom in the mix, okay? Which is something we talk a lot about in mixing and mastering, right? Now, back to basics. If you forgot how to bypass an effect, just do that. A short little tip, if you got heaps of effects, let's just say you're a bit crazy about your reverb design one day, and you're like, oh, I just want to see how all of it sounds dry, right? Hold shift, choose the first effect. I'm just ignoring this, ignore that. Choose your first effect, hold shift, click the last one, Command G, Control G on the Windows. And what that does is you're grouping the effects into a rack. It has a bypass button, so you can just bypass everything in one hit instead of doing like this. So much longer. It's silly, right? So if you go nuts with your effects chain, you can chuck it all in the group after the fact and then just off, on, just to see how far you're going. Maybe you've gone too far, easy to do. Okay, I'm definitely running out of time here, so I'm going to quickly show you delay. Let's go to this one. Delay, echo, same. Delay for the longest time was basically ba, right? Or sometimes ba, right? But echo is a continuation of that with the addition of repeating to zero. Yeah, let me show you what I mean. Now, Ableton's delay, it's basically the same. They have feedback, so they all go down to zero. So it's not like if you want to know what old school delay sounded like, anyone who DJs on Pioneer equipment, I think maybe even Denon equipment here, there's a delay and there's an echo. If you get a delay, it goes bata, whatever, repeat, right? But then echo goes, like that kind of repeating sound. So, but like I said, in Ableton, they behave very similar. The only difference is that echo has more fun stuff to play with, yeah? But anyway, what's this sound? This is a good part to mention. The order of effects is very important, right? The fact that I put a filter here and a delay after the fact, this sound's going to have the repeat echoes of the sound after it's being filtered and tone shifted, right? If I put this before the filter, I won't hear as much echo. It's essentially the filter is kind of cutting it off in a different way. So play around with the orders. If you get bored, shuffle your deck and try different combinations. You'd be surprised. A common thing to do is, it's very obvious, I should say, reverb and filter swap around, right? It'll sound very different. There's the old dry wet again. With delay and echo, the key term is the time, which by default is synced to the BPM of the track. And there's feedback, the amount of repetitions, right? Now, luckily in delay, there's a safety mechanism. If you remember or encountered in live sound at all, that feedback issue, that harsh thing, Usually what happens is when you have a microphone nearby and then just near a speaker and it's instant feedback, instant ouch, right? Luckily with the delay, you're not going to have that issue just by the nature of the design. There's a safety mechanism. However, there's also an infinite button. So if I click that and I start messing around with this, then I'll start asking for trouble. Oh, that turns into a loop actually, my bad. But yeah, in echo, it goes beyond 95%, so it can actually create feedback loops, which if you don't know how to control it, can hurt you very easily. Now, left and right, it's set up that way because you can actually change the time on each side, but by default you can't because it's linked. So let's hear the different timings. By the way, the older versions of Ableton Delay had a default behavior which sounded more like this. Right? Now, see if you notice this. So Ableton's delay for the last version or two now has this mode set to repitch by default. Repitch is to emulate tape, the analog style, where when you change the time, the tape heads will actually have to compensate, so it was kind of slow down or speed up. So therefore the pitch, obviously, because the audio is going around the tape, right, it'll be like that. So that's what it sounds like. By the way, what I like doing is taking it off sync. I'll keep the link on, but sync means no syncing to, sorry, taking off sync means that it's now completely independent from the BPM tempo, so it's up to you what you want to do with it. And I'm about to show you how delay can become a phaser. So this is what I mean, like there's a lot of crossover. Even though this is time-based, when you introduce modulation, because there's modulation in there, it starts creating a modulation effect, which is what? Phases, flanges, that kind of stuff, you know, it's fantastic, yeah? So you can imagine automation. Here we go. For the psychedelic, trance and rock people here, you know what I'm talking about. Lots of fun. And that's good. Echo is even more fun because there's, see that? Looks what's happening. I haven't played audio yet, but because of the underlying noise in the signal, if I add a high over 100% feedback, even the background noise starts looping on itself. Look, check this out. Eventually. Oh yeah, wait, I turned the noise off, didn't I? Oops. Let's do that again. Catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it. Yeah. Here we go. Now I know exactly how to control that. Now I'm waiting for that feedback to start looping, and I'm changing the time to get that pitching. If I didn't change it fast enough, if I didn't turn the feedback down fast enough, it would have kept going and would have created a feedback loop, which will be quite hard. So, oh no, there's not much time. I'm gonna have to make this part 2 next week. It's fun, right? I haven't scratched the surface yet, so I'm gonna show you something that you might like. This is a perfect argument for a spare audio channel. Switch to resampling mode. Turn record arm on. Maybe solo the channel that has all the fun stuff. Yeah, just so you can focus on that. And then take things off loop and record this in. So I'm going to record it. Oops, my bad. I'm going to start it from here. Oops, lost it. But you see my point. Here we go. Record off. Spare channel. That's how you record those tails. That, you know, low key for me is my favorite thing about producing. Like you hit stop somewhere random and an effect parameter set to a specific point, and then all of a sudden you hear this lovely, and you're like, oh, I wish I got that, right? For me, generally speaking, I always have a trash channel, which is an audio channel that's set to resample, and I normally record just to get these little interesting things. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I get super excited talking about this, and as you can see, the potential in this is pretty damn cool. I will split this lesson up into 2 because otherwise it won't be fair. Besides, last time I checked, the materials start getting more focused towards time to spend on assessments as we get closer and closer to the end. So I'll deck it up with more interesting things about this anyway. Okay. So audio effects. Play. Dry, wet, control. Watch your feedback if the effect has it, and just enjoy the procedure. If you're feeling particularly plucky one day, put on the resampling channel, hit record, do some stuff. It's fun. All right, I shall see everyone again soon. Until then, have a good one.